me go ahead and share my screen. All right, good afternoon, folks. I'm Alex Suarez with Texas Digital Library. We'll go ahead and get started now. So make sure those mics are muted and video if you so choose. I already went ahead and hit that record button. And good afternoon from a cold Austin, Texas. Thank you all for joining us today and welcome to today's webinar, GIS Library Services Models. This is our second webinar in our new GIS webinar series. And like I said earlier, my name is Alex Suarez and I am the Administrative Associate with TDL. All right, we're all pretty familiar with Zoom at this point, but just to go over the basics, you want to make sure that your microphone and video are muted. Presenters will also keep their mics and video muted until it is their turn to present. If you want to see who's in attendance, click on the participants icon in the bottom center of the screen. And if you have a question or comment, please type it into chat. You can access chat by clicking on the thought bubble at the bottom right of your screen. All right, and we at TDL are big fans of Bill and Ted because they are most triumphant and especially because they believe in being excellent to each other. We at TDL ask that you also be excellent to each other. We are dedicated to providing an experience for everyone that is free from all forms of harassment and inclusive of all people. We ask that everyone here today be considerate and respectful in speech and action, attempt collaboration before conflict, refrain from demeaning, discriminatory, or harassing behavior in speech, and be mindful of your environment and of your fellow participants. Please use chat for questions and comments pertaining to the panelists' presentations and topics at hand. We will save all of your questions for a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And finally, this meeting is being recorded. We will publish slides and recordings and share them with all of you in attendance today, as well as our members, partners, and colleagues in libraries and archives. And with that, I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to pass it over to Michael Shensky for some introductions.
All right, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us for our second webinar of the GIS Interest Group webinar series. I'm really glad to have you all with us this morning. We're really eager to share the webinar that we've been working on for the last month or so with you all, where we will be discussing different service models that folks can look to when they are trying to develop GIS services within their academic libraries. And so we want to cover different resource levels and focus on the types of services that you might be able to bring up or get started or develop, depending on what type of situation you have in terms of staff and other resources you might be able to allocate towards providing GIS services to your campus community. I'm going to go ahead and quickly share my screen and allow my co-presenters to do a few quick introductions. Give me 1 second here. And I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I am Michael Shensky. I am the GIS and Geospatial Data Coordinator for the UT Libraries at the University of Texas at Austin. And I'll let Josh and Diane introduce themselves as well.
Briefly, as it says, hi everybody. My name is Joshua Bin, and I am the Director of Data and Digital Scholarship at Baylor University. And I'll introduce myself more fully later.
And good morning, everybody. My name is Diane Lopez, and I am the Scholarly Resource Librarian at UTSA. One just quick thing about me, I'm in my first year of librarianship. And so this is a great opportunity to kind of talk about GIS and what we could do.
All right, thank you both so much for those introductions, and thank you for all the hard work that you've put into developing these slides and to all the discussions we've had as we've worked on putting this webinar together. So I'm going to kick things off here and kind of diving into our content for this morning with an introduction to the overall structure of this webinar, which I just very briefly alluded to a moment ago. And then I'll turn things over to Diane, and she'll really be the first one of us to dive into the content that we've prepared. So I've mentioned that we'll be focusing on different GIS service models that we have basically put together based on our vision of 3 different potential resource models that we think would be, rather common to find at different academic libraries. And that's not to say that these services can only, fit into, one resource level or another. We had to make some tough decisions about where they, would be most appropriate for this discussion. But we want to just emphasize that the way we've structured this is based on our interpretation of how maybe these services are most likely to develop, but it's not to say that it's prescriptive and that this is the only way that these services could be brought online or developed. And so what we'll be doing is looking at 3 specific levels. Basically, the first level being if an academic library just has subject librarians who maybe liaise with departments that are using GIS. What can they do, those subject librarians, to start to develop GIS services that support the campus community? A second level being if there's a dedicated research data services staff member who really has the full a full-time position dedicated to bringing up data services, some of which can be focused on geospatial data services. What might that type of academic library be able to develop in terms of GIS and geospatial resources for benefiting the campus community? And the highest level that we've envisioned being an academic library that has a dedicated GIS or geospatial data specialist who can focus full time on building out GIS resources and services. So those are our 3 models. What we hope y'all can take away from our webinar today is an understanding of what is possible even at kind of that minimal level of resource and personnel support for developing GIS services. Right? What can we do even if we don't have a dedicated GIS person or somebody in a research data services position? What might still be possible, kind of the low-hanging fruit, the things that are easier to bring online that can still have a lot of impact for the campus community. And we also want to provide a comprehensive overview of the full range of GIS services that academic libraries can bring online to support their respective campuses. So some of these things are maybe things that you can work on right away, like I said, requiring fewer resources. Other things are maybe going to be more aspirational, or things that academic libraries are going to be striving to work towards in the years ahead, and hopefully something that we might be able to have in place down the road. And so hopefully by giving this comprehensive overview, it sparks some new ideas for y'all and gets you excited about the possibilities and what can be done with GIS at our respective campuses. So with that, I'll finish our introduction and go ahead and turn things over to Diane. And I'll stop my screen sharing so you can go ahead and share your screen, Diane.
All right, thank you. Let me get my screen share up. Okay, everybody able to see my screen, right? Okay, perfect. All right, cool. So kind of like just I mentioned, my name is Diane Lopez. I am the Scholarly Resource Librarian at UTSA within my first year of librarianship. I do have an associate's in GIS that I earned at San Antonio College back in 2012. But the goal that, or kind of the achievement, like how Michael was saying, something to look towards the future is how can a subject librarian build up a GIS services with just limited information and resources at the moment, right? And so, let me move to my next slide. So of course, this is a JPL library. I actually work at the downtown library, so UTSA does have 2 libraries. So first would be on the educational services, right? So with educational services and not having a specialist, something that we all can do is create a resource guide or a LibGuide that provides different information and different resources. So here's an example of a research guide that was created by our geography librarian, Rita Wilson. And so she's also the government docs librarian. And so she's designed this research guide with key databases and just information, even on the information about the graduate certificate that we have here at UTSA. And so this kind of just allows a space and a presence for GIS to kind of live at UTSA. We do have departments that do use it. So I'm a subject librarian for demography. And so our demography students do rely on this LibGuide to get more information about different GIS resources. The next part would be, how do we support, as a subject librarian, how do we support during research and research consultations, right? And so just like how we are with our other subjects, this is the opportunity for us to just become familiar with different type of platforms, right? So it would be commercial data, being aware of that. Also probably designing a other guide with common questions, or adding a page to your GIS guide that you already have that links to common research questions, and also links to different and free resources and tutorials that you could find online that can support your students or your faculty members. The next aspect would be, how do we, as subject librarians, do data support? And so a lot of times, yes, the first thing that we're going to probably be doing a lot is doing the research guides. And that's just the beginning steps. Those are the first steps to take, right? And so it's just being familiar with the resources that are out there for GIS, and just being able to maybe be a step ahead of what faculty and students will probably require and need. And so that's where just being kind of just conscientious about, like, okay, what is out there for GIS? What is out there for data support? And so just things like that, that we can provide different resources and different links, so then students and faculty don't have to do the searching, that we actually will be able to do that for them. Then another aspect that we will be addressing is going to be the software to hardware access. And so this is where building a partnership and getting to know which departments use GIS. Is there currently a GIS lab in your institution? So one example is knowing who is managing and controlling the GIS lab, and seeing how the library could go ahead and support them. So in my discovery, I found that our geography and political science department actually has a GIS lab. And so knowing the faculty member who manages that, and so me and that faculty member have been in conversation about what can we do to support our GIS students a bit more, and ensuring that we do have all the resources that they need to be successful, and that will include the software and hardware access. One key thing to do is build the community at your institution that allows you to go ahead and collaborate, do events together. So this allows for more collaboration between institutions, and between not just institutions, but community partners or your institutional partners. So like how I was talking about earlier, the faculty member from my political science and the geography department right now, me and them are actually looking at how do we co-collaborate and do a GIS Day event that would, one, take off pressure from me, ensuring that I do a good job presenting GIS, but then also helps them with doing those minor operations, logistic things. And so that allows us to kind of do that. Once we get that built up strong relationships between the library and other departments that use GIS, the next probably thing would be is just creating a mailing list within your institution, so then everybody knows who everybody is, and everybody kind of realizes like, oh, there's other people who are interested in GIS. And so then we could create those communities, and we could create meetups, and we could have those type opportunities to just talk about GIS and how we could use it in different disciplines and different areas, or how to promote it. So the next aspect, of course, would be promoting. And so it's, at this moment, at this level, it would probably be more like a cheerleader role, where you're just with the pom-poms and like the megaphone and just cheering along, making everybody aware that there is a thing called GIS and how valuable this data is. And building those points of contacts is a crucial aspect. So, you know, this might be a part where if you are someone who is more introverted, this may be a great opportunity to explore an extroverted kind of reaching out to other people, being just excited for this type of service, this type of field, and just designing and like just, it's a lot of collaboration and a lot of reaching out to go ahead and promote GIS services. So then you could build it, and then you could get into the next level where my colleague Josh would be talking more about and the things that is possible to do. So I'm gonna now pass the mic on to Josh. And stop sharing my screen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Bin, and I am the Director of Data and Digital Scholarship here at Baylor University. And I'm responsible for providing data research support broadly, including mapping, which is different from geospatial analysis. I'm responsible for providing services in data visualization, text data mining, and data scripting. With my partner in crime, Christina Chan Park, who is our research data management expert. In this capacity, Baylor Libraries, I think, is perfectly situated as an example library, providing some standard and some novel ways of providing GIS and other mapping services. Picking up where Diane left off, not only can institutions like ours that do not have a dedicated GIS specialist in the library, not only can we offer guides and recruit presenters, but broadly speaking, we can hold our own mapping instruction sessions. We can partner with faculty on assisting their research a little bit more. We can record tutorials, can even create full learning modules on mapping with micro-credentials or digital badges. Here are a couple of examples. On the left, this is an example of a mapping LibGuide tutorial covering ESRI story maps, which are super easy if you've never used them. Really fantastic, very effective, great to use, especially with undergraduate students, very accessible. Yes, we are in Waco, and so yes, we use the fixer-upper locations as the case for this scenario. The undergraduate journalism class that Ellen Filgo, one of our social science liaison tonight, created for this, loved this as the example. On the right side is another LibGuide. This is on ArcGIS Business Analyst Online, which is another cloud-based GIS platform, but it's quite a bit more in-depth than what can be accessed via story maps. And so we invited Jonathan Cook. He is a faculty member at our Center for Spatial Research to do the instruction, and you can see he's listed here. He has done, I think, 3 GIS instruction sessions for us here in the library as part of a workshop program, and he has accompanied each of his workshops with research guides just like this one. Oh yes, we also have, apologies, we also have a Data Scholar program that offers video modules and digital badges in data and digital scholarship. Here's a screenshot from a video from that this program that offers the digital badges. This is a screenshot from the video on mapping using Tableau Desktop. Research support. You can see the trend. We're gonna keep everything Diane mentioned on the left and then focus in the center pane. Here it is very important to me to distinguish between mapping, which is creating a map and perhaps some exploratory analysis, from GIS, which also is going to include geospatial analysis. It's vital to have referral options ready to go. And for us here at Baylor, we're very fortunate that we have a very friendly Center for Spatial Research that we can refer students from humanities, social sciences, and the sciences to the Center for Spatial Research for help. We can offer more personalized consultations on the mapping support that we can provide. Interdisciplinary groups can be formed, and our liaison librarians are getting more and more comfortable with downloading and mapping data from subscription databases, such as Simply Analytics, Reference USA, Policy Map, etc. On the left, this is an example of where we can help, and this is a live example. Here, language researchers on campus wanted to explore which K-12 schools by state offer different language education in the schools by language. This is a Power BI generated interactive map that has Hindi selected. On the right, however, represents a research request, for example, in hydrology or watershed analysis. This we would refer. Data support. In addition to everything Diane discussed, we can refer researchers to deposit geospatial data in the Texas Data Repository and can explore purchasing data sets that might not have a supporting platform. Here's Baylor's instance of TDR named Bear Data. Now, we have not implemented this at Baylor, but at a previous institution where I worked, devised a novel solution to purchasing data files without supporting web environment. This university purchased the Reference USA back files, which come as a collection of CSV files, 1 per year, including their provided latitude and longitude for mapping, if mapping is what you want to do. At that other institution, an agreement was made with Data Planet, where Data Planet ingested and hosted the Reference USA data and made this data searchable and accessible and even mappable. And that is a fantastic example, the only place where I was a part of such a purchasing of raw data and being able to make it available in a third party's online platform. Access to software and hardware. One thing that we began last spring here at Baylor, when COVID made it difficult to impossible for our researchers to access campus-only software that has worked phenomenally, is setting up a virtual desktop environment on Microsoft Azure. These are university-controlled environments with full Duo authentication and provides access to software in an identical environment via a researcher's browser. The virtual desktops are Windows environments. The researchers can be on a Mac, Windows, Linux. They can be on an iPad, log in through the browser and access the suite of software that we're now providing via Microsoft Azure. Here is an example of accessing Power BI. You can see we use Power BI and also Tableau as 2 of our primary mapping applications with our researchers. Here's an example of accessing Power BI via the virtual desktop. You can see this is in my browser. In the remote desktop client. And these are locations of mannerism art as pulled together by this undergraduate art class. You can see 3 views of maps in this particular view of Power BI. We have the points of where the art collections are located. We have hotspots. And here we have a 3D globe view with pins showing the locations. And Power BI, as an aside, is Windows only software. So even if researchers are on campus, they can log into the virtual desktop and access this software. GIS community development. Now this is overgeneralized, of course, like Michael was saying at the beginning, but for simplicity, one difference, dividing line we can set between liaisons working with no specialists and liaisons working with a data specialist, but not a GIS specialist, is that ability to feel more comfortable speaking about GIS and forming and hosting groups and teams rather than solely participating. As an example, to help guide our data and digital scholarship endeavors, which of course includes mapping, but much broader, Christina Chan Park and I created the Data Research Administrative Team, or DRAT for short. DRAT serves as an advisory body and meets monthly to provide advice and direction to our data and digital scholarship endeavors. You can see here the collection of permanent advisors and advisors on a 1-year commitment that are made up of faculty, librarians, instructional specialists, archivists, etc. And one thing I want to point out, you can see here that there is a permanent seat here for a representative for the Center of Spatial Research, who for the last 1.5 years or so that we've been meeting monthly has been Jonathan Cook, that same research engineer who provides the workshops for us. And finally, promoting GIS services. Like many things, the more GIS and mapping you're comfortable working with, the easier it is to promote these services. Creating highly visible maps is always key. And if the librarian or library specialist is faculty, participation on data-related committees is fantastic. Now, I'll be honest, especially those who know me, I will be among the first to grumble about the requirements of librarians as faculty. However, at Baylor, we are faculty here, and I have made, even with all my grumblings, I have made many inroads among faculty and university administration, specifically by serving and performing well on faculty data-related committees. As a highly visible map example of a way to promote GIS services, here is a Tableau-driven online interactive map that Sinead Wood, one of our social science liaisons, and I put together recently for National Hispanic Heritage Month. And now I have the honor to pass this presentation off to the actual GIS specialist among us, Michael Shensky.
All right, thank you so much, Josh and Diane. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself, give you a kind of a more of an introduction to my background, and then describe my role here at UT and some of the services we've been able to bring up to support GIS work on campus over the last several years. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. All right, can everybody see my screen? All right, excellent. And let's see, looks like I'm on the wrong slide. There we go. All right, so yes, I am Michael Shensky. I am the GIS and Geospatial Data Coordinator at the University of Texas at Austin. I've been in this role for a little over 2 years now. I'm the first person to hold this role for any great length of time. So it's a relatively new position, really. It's only been around a few years. And really it's my goal within the libraries to really be that GIS specialist that provides all the GIS support that we can muster with the resources that we have available. And it's really my full-time job to focus on building out our GIS services, continuing to improve those, and figuring out how we can better support the geospatial research and instruction that's being done across our campus. And so I'll give you a little bit of a background about how this position came to pass as well, and came to be created. So prior to me being hired at UT and this position that I'm in being created, we had a research data services coordinator position that was created a few years prior. So I believe that was in 2016 or so. My colleague Jessica Trologan was hired into that role, and she was supporting not just research data services in general as she does now, but also providing that geospatial support. And fortunately, she had a background in GIS and was able to handle really getting a lot of new GIS services online. But it's a lot of work to support just the demands on campus for research data management support, and to do the GIS specific and geospatial data specific work that the campus is interested in as well. And so my position was created, and now, for the last several years, I've had the opportunity to really focus on our GIS services full time. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what we've been able to bring up, and what other academic libraries might be able to do if they have somebody in a role similar to the one I'm in, where it's really dedicated to supporting GIS services for a university campus. So continuing with the same structure here that Diane and Josh have established, basically in terms of educational services, in addition to everything Josh and Diane have mentioned, if you have somebody in that specialist role who can really dedicate more time than would be expected of a subject librarian or a research data services specialist or a general data specialist, somebody in a GIS specific role has enough time during the week to really focus on building out more than just doing the occasional workshop, but can hopefully get to the point where they can develop a GIS workshop series, right? So something that's pretty regular, that folks can start to depend on, build a schedule around. And that's one of the things that we've done at UT in the last few years. We've taken our Data and Donuts series that was for several years just focused on a broad range of data management topics, and we've created kind of a sub-series called our Data and Donuts Geospatial Edition workshop series that for the last several years has run in each of our spring semesters. So we still have the regular Data and Donuts series that's been running in the fall, and then in the spring we have a geospatial focus series covering topics like GIS and related technologies for mapping things like R or Python. And it's been really successful. So again, I'm very fortunate that we really already had the groundwork laid with Jessica Trologan already basically setting up this series, and me just kind of coming in and giving it a geospatial bent for one semester in each academic year. And that's been really successful. And so we're still exploring ways that this can be broadened and improved upon. And just this semester, for the first time, we've run the Data and Donuts workshop series virtually. And so, the things are in a state of flux with everything having to adapt to the new normal due to COVID restrictions. But this is one of the things that we've been able to establish, and it's been very successful in terms of providing these opportunities for folks on campus to get these bite-sized chunks of GIS experience without having to take a full semester course. For libraries where maybe librarians are faculty and there's maybe an ability to teach courses a little more easily, or if librarians have that ability to teach as part of their role on campus, that can be another area where a GIS specialist can assist, is by teaching GIS courses in a particular department to support geospatial education on campus. So here I just have a kind of an example of what we've done with that Data and Donuts Geospatial Edition workshop series. So on the left, you see our flyer that we used to advertise that series this past spring, the spring 2020 semester, where we had 6 workshops that ran on Friday afternoons for an hour and a half each. And we had really good attendance. So I think we had an average of about 30 to 25 folks at each of these. And we've also, it wasn't just me presenting, we also brought in, some guest lecturers to mix things up and cover a wide range of geospatial topics. And it's been really successful. And then there on the right-hand side, we just see an example of one of the lecture slides from one of the workshops I led this past spring. In terms of research support, so in addition to what is possible with, just a subject librarian being able to provide this assistance to folks on campus, and in addition to what a general data specialist might be able to provide assistance with, somebody in that GIS specialist role would be really able to focus on training subject librarians to allow them to triage support. So trying to build up some of those skills among other library staff so that they can answer, the simpler GIS and geospatial data questions and know when it's really necessary to refer somebody to the GIS specialist for assistance. And so one of the things we've done at UT is, we've had several liaison librarian training sessions where, we've covered the basics of GIS and introduced our liaison librarians to the common geospatial workflows, creating a map, what GIS software applications are out there and commonly used by folks on campus, QGIS, ArcGIS Pro, and so that's been really successful for us. One of the things that an academic library might be able to do, this is something we haven't yet done or experimented with at UT, is establishing GIS walk-in office hours. So having a set time each week or on certain days of the week where folks can just drop in for GIS assistance. One of the things we are doing at UT is kind of an alternative to this drop-in model is scheduled personalized research consultations. So traditionally those were done in person for the last 6-7 months or so since March. We've been doing those all virtually. So really that hasn't had too much of an impact. In some ways it's made things easier to schedule, but through our LibGuide, folks on campus can schedule an appointment to meet with me for one-on-one support related to their geospatial project. So whatever GIS questions they might have, I can schedule a time for a Zoom meeting with them to help them work through the problems that they might be running into or answer questions that they have. One of the other things that I've started doing in the last year that somebody in a GIS specialist role could potentially do in their position to provide support to the campus community is to participate as a team member on grant-funded projects. So really provide embedded research support. So going beyond just the occasional consultation, but being a core team member who is responsible for carrying out work on certain grant-funded projects. In terms of data support, so having a GIS specialist on staff really opens up some additional possibilities here beyond what can be done with just a subject librarian focused on GIS efforts and a general data specialist available to work on data support for geospatial data. With that person in a GIS specialist role, you might even be able to get to the point where you're able to bring up a portal specifically for geospatial data. That's one of the things that the UT Libraries has been able to do. In the last year, we released our Texas GeoData portal on GIS Day of 2019. So it's been almost exactly a year since that's been online, and it's been a great success. We've seen steadily growing numbers of visitors to that site on a daily and monthly basis. So it's definitely being visited. It's seeing that widespread adoption that we like to see, and we're continually focusing on making it better. So trying to publish new data sets, improve our infrastructure to make it a little bit easier to manage, and that's something that is possible if you have a GIS specialist, and even beyond that, you might need some additional IT support and really the larger backing at the library. It might not be something a GIS specialist working in isolation can bring online, but you also need that IT component. Geospatial data curation services is something we're talking about at the UT libraries and trying to figure out how we can better support that. So Josh mentioned general data specialists being able to assist with data support via TDR, which folks, researchers on campus can share their geospatial data through and publish their geospatial data sets to TDR. If you have a GIS specialist on staff, you can also start to focus on geospatial data curation services. So maybe developing guides that describe how geospatial data should be managed and cleaned up and processed prior to publishing, or if folks are publishing to a portal like TDR, being able to proactively reach out and advise them on ways that they can maybe improve the structure of their data, or make it easier to find or share with folks via that platform. Controlled access to purchase commercial data sets through a geospatial data portal. So this is one of those things that's can be difficult to manage without a dedicated geospatial portal that limits user access to particular data sets. This is one of the things that we are exploring at UT. We don't currently have it in place. Our GeoData portal currently only provides access to data sets that we're sharing publicly. But we do have certain commercial geospatial data sets we would eventually like to share more easily with the campus community. But in order to do that, we need to work again with IT to figure out a method of integrating a single sign-on authentication into our GeoData portal so that we can verify folks are UT affiliated and that they should have access to particular data sets which have licensing restrictions that prevent us from sharing them publicly. So again, something that it's possible to work towards, and something that if you look at what other universities with GIS specialists, who've been on staff a bit longer have been able to do, that's something that you'll see other universities allowing through their GeoData portals. And one of the other things that a GIS specialist can do is work on enhancing libraries collections via operations like georeferencing, so assigning coordinates to scan map images, for instance, so that when those are loaded in GIS software, they show up in the right place on Earth, so that you can effectively share things like scan map images through a GeoData portal, so that you have that necessary georeferencing and associated metadata to make those data sets compatible with the portal. Things like geocoding, so taking spreadsheets that might have addresses or city names or other place names and being able to add actual geospatial data coordinates to them. So again, kind of enhancing existing data sets through GIS work. Or adding geospatial metadata. So where maybe geospatial data sets already exist within libraries collections, being able to go in and organize that metadata into a standardized geospatial metadata format like ISO 19139, and being able to fill in the things that are going to make that data more discoverable and easier for folks to take advantage of, since they'll have that necessary descriptive information that lets them know how to use it. As an example here, we see a screenshot of the Texas GeoData portal that I mentioned UT released last November. And so this is publicly reachable at geodata.lab.utexas.edu. So if you'd like to visit it, I'd encourage you to do so and take a look. We're pretty proud of it. We're sharing about 700 data sets from our UT libraries collections, but you can also find data from other university libraries across the country who are openly sharing their metadata publicly, and we've pulled that metadata in. So it really provides access to about 30-something thousand publicly available geospatial data sets. And then on the right, we see an example of a Python script that I've written to process our geospatial data and get it ready for loading into the portal. So doing some of that work I mentioned earlier of building out the metadata that already exists for geospatial data sets, getting that to an organized, standardized format in preparation for future work like loading it into a portal. In terms of supporting access to geospatial hardware and software, with a GIS specialist on staff, that might be, it might be possible for the libraries to manage geospatial software licensing. So for products like ArcGIS software, which is developed by Esri. The libraries might be a place where that Esri site license is managed for the campus. That's not the case at UT, at least not entirely, where we're not responsible for the legal administrative side of things, but we do handle, or we do have admin capabilities to be able to generate license files for folks on campus, to manage ArcGIS Online, which is a connected kind of responsibility here, where we're able to create new user accounts. We can manage content in the ArcGIS Online environment, manage licensing for folks, and control who has access to which ArcGIS products. And so here at UT Austin, it's really a collaboration between our liberal arts information technology services department and the libraries, where we both share in some of those administrative responsibilities. We're also a support contact for software vendors. So sometimes I'll get questions from folks who are running into trouble with ArcGIS software, and as a designated software vendor contact person, I can reach out to Esri, the software developer, and get clarification from them on what's going wrong with the software, and help facilitate that assistance for our users on campus. And in some cases, we might have libraries that are also purchasing geospatial hardware to be loaned out to researchers and folks on campus who need things like GPS units, maybe UAVs. So this is maybe, again, something that is maybe a bit further down the road in terms of services that libraries develop. One of the tricky aspects here is that software and hardware are changing all the time. And so, it can be a challenge to keep equipment up to date, and having to kind of purchase new equipment regularly to stay on top of what is in demand and provides the latest features. So this one is kind of a more optional one, or again, something that is maybe aspirational to strive towards, not something that we're really doing to any great extent at UT, but again, a possibility. And here we see a screenshot of ArcGIS Online and kind of that administrative profile, where you have that ability to control the configuration for your university and manage those day-to-day functions like licensing, creation of user accounts. One of the things we've done at UT Austin to facilitate this work is integrating or really connecting our single sign-on system with ArcGIS Online, so that our users can now create their own ArcGIS Online accounts and use their UT credentials to log into ArcGIS Online. That's something we've had in place for about the last 9 months, and it's dramatically reduced the workload on staff who are previously having to manage the creation of ArcGIS Online accounts. In terms of GIS community development, again, if you have a full-time staff member dedicated to building out GIS services, it's possible to host regular meetups or happy hours, trying to build that community, get folks together on campus where they can share ideas and talk about GIS topics and just get to know each other and network. One of the things we've done recently prior to the pandemic is combined the digital humanities happy hours and meetups that have been going on for a number of years prior to me being hired, in which I regularly attended after I started at UT, turning those into a kind of digital humanities / GIS meetups to try to build a bigger audience and generate more of a community and get those folks working together. Unfortunately, we only had a chance to test that a few times in the spring semester before the pandemic came and made in-person events not possible. So we'll see how we pick up with that once things hopefully return to normal in the not too distant future. The other things that I've been able to do in my role is develop a full schedule of GIS Day events, working with other folks on campus to build that out. And so that's something we've done for we did last year for the first time. We had a series of GIS Day events on campus, and something that I'm currently working on for this year in 2020. So GIS Day is coming up on November 18th, and we've been working on planning it for the last 6 months or so. So this is an example of our events from 2019 for GIS Day, which is held in the middle of November each year. So you can see our GIS Day landing page on the left, just a screenshot of that. And then on the right, you see the agenda of events that we were able to prepare, working in coordination with our location information services staff who are part of university administration. So, managing geospatial data for the campus, they were able to partner with us in the libraries to put on what was a pretty successful event that we were really proud of. And then finally here, in terms of promoting GIS services, in addition to everything that Josh and Diane mentioned, trying to basically connect the different pieces of things that you might have been able to bring online as a GIS specialist. So if you have a GeoData portal, you have more developed LibGuides, you have other web pages that you put together, if you have web maps that you've created in ArcGIS Online, linking these things together so it's easier for folks to discover new resources once they find one of them, right? And kind of building that web of GIS resources is something that we can additionally do to make sure folks are aware of everything that is available to them on campus. And so that is kind of my overview of what might be possible in an academic library with somebody in a dedicated GIS position. And then Diane, I think we had talked about you covering the conclusion. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes. So I mean, you could leave your share window right
leave
here.
my slide up and go ahead and take over.
Yeah. So yes. So kind of how we are all talking about, like from the beginning stages to like having a subject librarian who is familiar with or familiar to limited knowledge of GIS, to having an expert. The one thing is being familiar with the people who is who in GIS. And so we have, let me just get my thoughts really quickly. There is organizations. So like the first one is the South Central ARC user group. So that is for South Texas and Central Texas. And so you could join them so you could get more familiar with networking and knowing who does GIS in the state of Texas. Then one below that is the Texas Natural Resource Information System. And so that right there would just give you a bit more knowledge, background data, just getting more familiar with Texas. Eventually, it's a division of the Texas Water Development Board. And so they have amazing different resources and programs and events that you could attend. The third one is the ESRI training. So the e-learning, so that is a great opportunity to go ahead and learn about ArcGIS, which is probably the most used GIS program out there. And so this will just get you acclimated to GIS and learn more about GIS, like how, Michael was mentioning with like the Data and Donuts program, instead of having to take a long semester or a quarter to learn a program, you could go ahead and do it in bite sizes and do day events, week events, and other things that will help you get more familiar with GIS. The last one is an actual open source GIS program called QGIS. And that one also provides training. But what's really great about this one is that because it's open source, this one is free to download. So if you are not, if your institution does not yet have an ArcGIS licensing, this is a great place. This is a great software to start off with. It's open source. They have a lot of great different resources available to have students learn how to use it, or if you as a librarian wants to learn how to use it, this is a great one. So these are just kind of like our top 4 different GIS resources that are available. There's a lot more, but now I open the floor for our last 5 minutes to any questions or comments that you guys may have for us. All right, Ray presentation. Question, all right. So we have our first question. If money for further human resources and equipment software were not impediment, what kind of future infrastructure for GIS slash library service could the panelists see for library support services in the near future, say 3 to 5 years from now? And then there's an additional part to this. This is also, are there other library GIS models beyond their own institutions that the panelists could point to as a national best practice models for GIS slash academic libraries? Good question. Michael, do you have an answer for this? Because I was going to be like, you know, I'm in my first year and I didn't learn about librarianship until 2016. So I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this question.
Yeah, no, I'll go ahead and take a shot at this one. And Josh, maybe you can back me up if you know, there are other things that you can think of to add as well. I'll maybe address the second question first in terms of institutions that, you know, one might look to as examples of what's possible out there. I know one that we commonly find ourselves, you know, looking at as an example is Stanford and the great geospatial work that they're doing. They are using the same GeoData portal platform that we are, GeoBlacklight, for the front end of that portal, and they were kind of, you know, an inspiration for us on that front. I know a lot of the projects I'm working on in terms of, you know, managing geospatial data and libraries collections. I frequently stumble upon things they're doing, and, you know, innovative you know, work that they've done in the last few years that is kind of maybe you know, where we want to be, you know, in the months and years ahead, and kind of working to do similar things. So I'll just mention them as one library that folks might you know, look to, and you can, you know, check out their library web pages and see some of the things they're doing, and check out their GeoData portal. In terms of future infrastructure to support GIS and library services, that's an interesting one, right? Like, where are things going? I mean, on the one hand, you know, I think technology is changing. You know, things like virtual reality, augmented reality. I could see how being connected to geospatial services at some point, you know, thinking farther down the road, you know, playing a role similar to the role that phones play now, cell phones, and how those are now used as geospatial data collection tools, and have in some cases supplanted GPS units for, you know, kind of, you know, data collection work that doesn't require really high accuracy. One of the other things that I could see potentially come up in the future is folks collaborating more closely on things like geospatial data portals, trying to pool their assets and resources to reduce the cost and reach a wider audience. So basically getting you know, a bigger impact for hopefully a smaller investment, and being able to build, you know, those connections and network with other universities on certain key goals like that.
I think I would add, as we're closing here, to answer that same question, Ray. I really view, even if, as you ask, if money and resources were no object, I think the structure of how you would provide GIS or any type of data services in the library is going to really be determined by what your research users' needs are, and the structure of how you would build around the existing subject liaisons, and how you would build in that specialist, where you could have very centralized models, where you could have a team of specialists that might provide support and have very little interaction with the traditional subject librarians. You could have a model where it's very decentralized, where you could have a team of librarians that are trying to learn as a group and increase their services that they provide, and then everything in between on that spectrum. The ideal model from my point of view would be having that a central specialist. How many would depend upon how many your researchers need. But I think the ideal model, best practice for me, would be that data specialist would work hand in hand with the subject liaisons in almost every capacity. Every communication, email, teaching, consultation, all of that would be done in direct partnership with the subject librarians. So here at Baylor, for example, where we're talking about what would we see in the next 3 to 5 years future, we don't have a geography program here, and we don't have any sort of urban planning program here at Baylor. So the idea that even all the money, no money impediments, I don't know if we could justify having 100% library faculty in the library on just GIS, just because we don't have all of the programs that would support it. So it really would depend upon what the campus needs and what sort of model, with that sort of having the specialist as one unit, having the subject librarians as another, and figuring out how are they going to work together, how are they going to work in tandem to provide that support. That's really where the different models, I think, would be applied.
Yeah, no, I agree with you right there, Josh. Yeah, I think as a subject librarian, one thing is bringing that enthusiasm for GIS is a really important part. And it's that first year, like I would say, you know, in 3 to 5 years, I know my goal would be like knowing every department that uses GIS and knowing every department chair, but then also building those relationships so then we can collaborate and we could work together and we could promote GIS and we could develop a great foundation. And then in hopes, you know, in the next, you know, decade, be where, you know, where UT is at, right? Having someone who is the expert and having that person to be that dedicated GIS service is where I kind of see, hopefully, if, you know, if money is not a question, in 3 to 5 years is where UTSA will have a dedicated GIS, either a dedicated data service team or a dedicated GIS person. But otherwise, you know, thank you everybody for the great comments and chat. Though I will pass to Alex because I think you will have some closing remarks right here. Okay, cool.
Yeah, just wanted to thank everybody for showing up. Thank you so much to our presenters. It was great presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at a.suarez@austin.utexas.edu. I'll go ahead and send out the slides and the recording once it's available to all those who attended. I'll also be sending out a survey, so it'd be really great if we could get some responses for that. And that's it for me on our end. So if there's no other questions, just remarks, positive remarks in the chat, I'll go ahead and stop recording.